Welcome to another Reading Reactions live stream. In today's video, I'm going to be going over "Cancel Earthworms" by Julia Rosen, which is an essay that I've found through this book series, The Best American Science and Nature Writing of 2021. It's moving on to 2022, by the way, so Happy New Year to everybody. For reasons of logistics, the 2022 version of this book is not published yet. It is literally the fourth day of the new year. So I'm just going to continue slogging through stuff from a whole year ago, or actually almost 2 years ago. I am excited, though, to read this particular essay, mainly based off of a couple impressions. I don't really have a lot of information on it, other than we have this idea of Eurocentrism. We have this idea of earthworms as good and cultivating it, but it turns out to be like an invasive species of some sort. And how is that going to affect the ecosystem? This is all stuff that I basically read in the introduction. If we just look over here, in the sort of marvelous introduction written by Ed Yong for this year, for this collection. So I don't have a lot to work with. So what I'm going to do right now is just explore a little bit to see some of the reactions that might be out there in terms of this essay. That said, this is a 2020 essay, so it's not like classic fiction or anything like that. You're not going to find Goodreads reviews about this particular essay. So it's not going to be the easiest to find actual reviews of people who like genuinely appreciated it. You know, we're going to have obviously Ed Yong over here who is going to speak about, I mean, we could even jump right to it because it's such a brief little mention. Like, we can jump to what he says about Julia Rosen. Like over here in the introduction, he says, "From global warming to global warming, Julia Rosen explains that earthworms are not native to the eastern United States, but were introduced by people who held the Eurocentric idea that worms are good. They are good universally and in their new ranges." I assume these new ranges means the American ranges, the American ecosystem. "These ecosystem engineers have re-engineered ecosystems to their detriment." Now, I think the ecosystem engineers is referring to the worms themselves. They are the ones that engineer the ecosystems because they're worms. So I assume that's what they do. But they've done it to actually harm themselves, which is interesting. It's interesting. So they're harming themselves, they're harming other people, they're harming other, I don't know if people is the right word, but they're harming other organisms, you know. So maybe there's this little, there's a sort of tricky thing that's happening there. But that's all, you know, that's all we have from Ed Yong, the editor of this particular series or installment in the series. Let's see. Maybe there's something else online. So switching over to my computer screen real quick. Let me just make the window fit real quick. Okay. So no weird things happening there, and we can get right into it. So I'm looking for "Cancel Earthworms" by Julia Rosen, and here we go. Right there we have. That's hilarious. This is so meta. Literally, my live, my live stream right now is what I'm looking at. But anyway, we have fragments from Floyd. That must be a maybe a science blogger. Invasion of the dirt jumping worms. So we have some other potential science blogger, and we have the original article in the Atlantic itself. Okay, "The Crazy Worms Remaking Forests Aren't Your Friendly Neighborhood Garden Worms." Then again, your friendly neighborhood garden worms aren't so great either. So that's kind of a interesting little Tagline. I assume that crazy worms and regular earthworms are both bad. That's the idea. But I didn't know anything about crazy worms in the first place. So, I mean, maybe I should look it up. Crazy worms. What are crazy worms? Jumping worms, Asian jumping worms, they Alabama jumpers, snake worms. They're first found in Wisconsin 20. Oh, they're really recent. And when they are handled, they violently thrash, spring into the air, and can even shed their tails to escape. That sounds a little scary, honestly. I don't want to, dude. That is it's a little overwhelming, man. These jumping worms. It's like when a cockroach first flew. When I first witnessed a cockroach flying, have invaded the forests of 15 states, and scientists are worried. They look like normal earthworms, but they can escape. Oh, man. Advertisement hell. At least 15 states. Highly invasive. They are far more sinister because they reproduce quickly and without mates. They reproduce by themselves. Amazing. They swiftly devour the nutrients. The nutrient-polluted soil erodes quickly. Okay, and that's the problem with these crazy worms. So at least I know. But what I know now is that we're actually not talking about the crazy worms. So we're talking about the other worms, the regular worms, and we're gonna cancel them. Let me try to think. Oh, let's look at Twitter too. Julia Rosen earthworms. Let's go into that. No Rosen earthworm. Okay, how about Rosen earthworms? All right, here we go. So the Atlantic story only had 16 tweets. Retweets, I mean. Earthworms. Oh, this is Michael Rosen. This is a whole different. That's a whole different thing. So there's not a lot of noise on Twitter for this. Although there is this one over here. That's literally just a tagline, though. It's just a share. So there's no commentary. There's no controversy around this. So this is unlike the COVID essay that I read last, like a couple days ago. I am curious what comments there are here. So that's where all the squirming worms in my garden came from. They're getting insects from ground to feed nestlings. I'm the only person in my neighborhood who doesn't use lawn service, which pours pesticides over soil. That's such a autobiographical comment that I have no idea what to say about that. Let's see if we get anything about cancel earthworms. Just the full title. All right, Julia Rosen herself shares it. Maybe she has more of a response. It's her own story. I shared it with my whole class. Oh, I wish we had a specific, substantial. Okay, so nothing specific there. But it is good news for any academic to have themselves featured in such a prominent publication. So, congratulations. Huh? I wonder what this is. Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about this one. More sources never heard. I see. Earthworm. Okay, this is interesting. This is someone actually talking about the content. Let me zoom in on this here. Literally, even the introduction of earthworms changed the composition of the soil in Mi'kmaq that we cannot sustain the kinds of forests we used to. On top of cutting, it's rare to find birch big enough to make a canoe. So we don't have the same earth that we used to have, is basically the conversation they're having. Whoa, what? Earthworms, yeah, they're invasive. They've been replacing native worm species since they were introduced in 1600s. Yeah, and then we have this other dude. This is such a nerdy conversation. It's amazing. Yo, yeah, earthworms are actually an invasive species. Yeah, earthworms imported from Europe and East Asia are invasive and eat the good parts of the soil as well as aerating it by and increasing carbon dioxide efflux from the soil. Hang on, what is efflux? Okay. Just like right, the extra stuff that just comes off. Yeah. The chaff. Influx and efflux. Oh, I've never known of that pair of words. Influx and efflux. Okay, that's interesting. Anyway, by yeah, they're invasive. They eat the good parts. They dry it out, and then they increase the outflow of carbon dioxide. This is the one I was referring to. And then this other one is like, huh. Actually, I've heard of this publication, but I don't know what they are. Taylor. Oh, never mind. It's an academic journal. I see, or like a publisher of academic journals. Okay, so that's an academic. So this is an academic journal article. And then the other person's like, "Nah, I thought you were talking about this one." Okay, say more sources. Yay! So happy nerds, awesome. Thank you guys. That was an exciting conversation to be part of. I'm just glad I could. I'm glad that I could just be a spectator in that conversation because it's such a peculiar and quirky conversation to have. Oh, hang on, what happened? Cancel Earthworms. So now I'm looking. This is somebody else, but no retweets or comments. No retweets. Not a lot of retweets or comments here. So I think this person's trying to be funny, right? Okay, well, that's just a random one-off joke. There's not a lot of engagement with the content, so I'm gonna skip. There was actually quite a bit of noise around this. A lot of people were sharing this article. Hmm. What? There seems to be some sort of insinuation of racism, but I don't fully understand. Anyway, this is from almost 2 years ago, and we're about to learn about earthworms. Okay, I think that's pretty good for Twitter. Invasive. I'm kind of scared to watch this. I'm scared, but I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try it. What is this? Oh, it's stop animation. Weird. Yo, that is so strange. Okay, yeah. It's like a school project. Is this a school project? I can't tell. No, it doesn't sound like a school project. At least it's really written well. And it's a lot of work for a school project, honestly. I kind of dig this video. It's so interesting. But I'm not. So I'm not gonna get into the video. I'm just gonna do a quick skim. But that's an interesting. That's an interesting. This is an interesting site, honestly. Uh, Master's degree, biology teacher, physical therapist. I see. So that's the background. Wow, passionate guy. Ugh, they're not doing anything for these little bastards, you know. So I'm kind of curious with these earthworms are like. But we don't have to get so much into details because I'm literally just gonna read about it like right now. And so I skimmed this website. I don't think I'm gonna get much from it. It's a little overwhelming to look at this website. So I'm gonna get into the text. And now we're beginning the actual text itself. Here we go. Oh, I'm so bad at live streaming. Like, hey Olivia, you've been chatting for a while. I've been completely ignoring you. I'm sorry. Hey Olivia, welcome to the live stream. Cancel earthworms. Thank you for dabbing. Good to good to have you with us. All right, so I'm about to get into the text itself. The Twitter was pretty good. I'm glad that I could find that one real nerdy conversation about it. Super nerdy, super amazing. And I'm glad that I could see. Some other someone else's personal blog reflection or reaction to it. Now I'm going to get into the video reaction. And Olivia, it sounds like you're reading it right now with us. Us as in the royal us, the royal we. Me. So let's read this together. So let me just jump into Cancel Earthworms. Dang. Suddenly I no longer how to use my my own Kindle. Cancel Earthworms. And here we go. Splotch. This is... Oh, it's in the Bronx? Okay, this is... Okay, so it's not... We're in, like, the city. Okay. Bouncy Dobson. Oh, okay. So this is like the mustard gas for worm. Yo, that sounds gross. Oh my god, that sounds real gross. They snap their bodies like angry rattlesnakes. I actually don't physically know where Hudson Bay is, so I kind of want to just double check. Like, I want to know how far this ice came down. So this must be... So I'm thinking like New York area. Oh, it's no, it's way above. Okay. And it came down into Iowa and Ohio, which is... So the ice came all the way down here. It all came all the way over here. Okay. There are not supposed to be any earthworms east of the Great Plains and north of the Mason-Dixon line, but there are, thanks to humans. We've been moving worms for centuries. Okay, so they've been extinct. They were supposed to be extinct, but we brought them over. Except Antarctica. Global warming. It's cute. But apparently it's not very cute. Right. Seton Falls. They're from Korea, Japan. Woo, Korea. They're known as jumping, and they have the potential to remake the once wormless forests of North America. Sounds scary. They seem symbolic of a healthy ecosystem. Darwin was the one who made them sound like the good guys. To the sound of a bassoon. Okay, it's just hilarious imagining Charles Darwin playing the bassoon to like some worms. Oh, they panic to the C note. That's so, that's so random. 10 tons of soil per acre per year. That's a lot of soil. That's honestly a lot. Although it's not clear how. We're talking about the worms in the aggregate, I assume. It's not one worm. The humble critters. That's a good phrasing. This is already a fun and bouncy, just like Dobson, a fun and sort of interesting writing already. We're going right into history, like the geological history, the sort of social history of learning how our minds have changed around this. If it was a bestseller, that's interesting. Nature's wonder workers. We give them all these. We lavish praise on these guys. Worm centric literature such as okay. They are not. Oh, the okay. We're firing shots right away. Right away. They are not necessarily doing anything for it. They also cause trouble in agricultural fields. Nutrients and pesticides to leak, carbon and nitrous oxide to escape. That's that word I learned. Efflux. Carbon dioxide efflux. Nitrous oxide efflux. All right. Oh, the times were so simple back then. Yeah, global warming. That's pretty funny, right? Yeah, what happened here? The mustard pour is over a few minutes after it begins. They have disappeared back into the forest, so they don't die, I guess. So it's not quite mustard gas for them. It's not deadly for them. Okay, do these plants adapt to the jumping worms? Oh, okay. So somebody, okay, yeah, because it's in the city, somebody just threw their trash mattress on top of their their research plot. It is hot though, 38. Lumbricus terrestris, night crawlers, hundreds of years ago. In the 80s, we started finding other ones. When they threw away extra fishing bait. Duff. You know, in Korea we have this dessert constantly in like I don't know milfui fee milfui fee. All right, a milfui. I don't know how to say it. So of slow, but basically bunch of little layers. Okay, a bunch of little layers of slowly decomposing leaves deposited over the course of years, if not decades. That layer creates a home. But when the worms show up, they devour it within a few years. All that duff goes puff. I'm trying to be funny. They were released in one giant burst, and then the invertebrate population of soil collapses. Huh. It's like taking out all the animals and just putting in elephants, a ton of elephants. that's kind of an interesting image. Salamanders go, birds go, plants go. Native species are ill prepared to root into the hard soil left behind when the worms have finished eating. So the worms are just eating everything up, and they're kind of taking away, they're getting first dibs on everything because they just eat, eat, eat. Oh, they can even stop trees from growing. Even seedlings are hard to find in the maple forests of New England. And I did not know New England had famous maple forests, but sure, I believe it. Whenever I think of Canada, maple, I think of Canada. They take out all the understory plants, leaving nothing for deer to chew on. So then what happens is that the deer chew on the young trees. In 100 years' time, maybe it's going to be Aunt Jemima. That's a real horror story for people in Vermont. So I had no idea the maple syrup industry, there was one in New England, but apparently that's a thing. They're often called ecosystem engineers. Except that are larger and denser. Denser in number. And they focus on just the top 6 inches. Ground beef. That's kind of gross too. Dude. Okay. I want to know exactly what understory means, so I'm going to double check. The underlying layer of vegetation in a forest or wooded area. But so it's basically beneath the canopy, but above the floor. Beneath the canopy, but above the floor. So what's the floor then? Is it literally just detritus, duff, horizon, vegetative part, leaves, branches, bark, stems? I never really thought that much about the forest, but now the forest seems so interesting. With all these layers, right? I read a passage for an SAT practice test recently talking about like how life, like certain organisms that are adapted to life in the, what's the opposite of an understory? In the canopy are not suited for life on the floor. And of course they aren't, but it's just interesting to think of the forest as actually having multiple worlds, and you guys are living in totally different worlds even though you are in the forest. Anyway, So I'm just like a little curious about that. But coming back to the passage, here we go. Like a funnel. Yo, we're mixing some metaphors here. They're acting like a meat grinder, apparently. So they only leave the tough ones like poison ivy and Virginia creeper. Then they prime the ground for invasive species. So invasives as an invasive species, they reshape the floor from the ground up. Everything they do is transformative. Until it moves, it looks just like an earthworm. Clitellum, that's a gross sounding word. Hermaphrodites. Middle, it's milky white and sits near the head. Like the Alabama jumper. Imported plants where they caught the attention of groundskeepers. I swear they're killing my plants. DC with the cherry trees, the Japanese, right? The cherry blossoms, interesting. It's interesting that we don't actually. Okay, I see. They were feeding the platypuses with these worms. But for some reason, they exploded in the last decade, including even within city limits. I wonder if they're from Korea and Japan. Maybe are we stressed out about these guys in Korea, Japan, or is the ecosystem just different here? What's going on? Who's this person? Clara Pregitzer. I'm gonna say Pregitzer. Good sightlines. Knob and kettle terrain. That's kind of interesting what that is. I wonder if I can find out what that is in just a second. I'm going to skip then. Yeah. The coffee ground soil. Oh, nasty. Same reaction. That's so funny. Okay. A 6-inch long monster with a stick. Yeah, okay, that's big. She is unsettled. This is one of the best parks. They're everywhere. There's got to be like millions. Okay. And she only finds one area. That's a big change from a few years ago. So Dobson goes and checks. So compared to a couple years ago, they're everywhere. Okay. He's seen a single worm move. What did that researcher do? He just watched that worm for a whole day? Along waterways, but with the humans, it's all too easy to unwittingly transport worms and cocoons and plants mulch soil on the treads of shoes and tires or caked onto landscape equipment. In 2017, only one sighting, but now they're already under siege. What are boreal forests? Ah, so Aurora Borealis, like northern. Okay. Hang on. This is a different person. This is Bernie Williams. 2013, the day that ruined many of our lives, says this worm expert. What does that okay? What does that mean? Well, that's worms are everywhere. Zombie worms. 25 acres over 3 years, eradicating their European rivals. "52 out of 72 counties. They loathe the worms. The worms can decimate the flowers and vegetables. Through a screen. Infestation levels can come pouring out of a house's foundations like Medusa's head," Williams says. "If you like invertebrates, you squeal with delight. Homeowners, however, tend to be less thrilled than in bad years." I see. Of course, because it's kind of gross. And I'm just checking on that name. Williams is burnt. Yes, Williams is his person. I was trying to figure out if I missed Bernie Williams' job, but she's just a worm expert at the State Department of Natural Resources. Even their soccer fields, because the turf gets messed up. Some people fight about who introduced the worms. That is interesting. You can't really do anything. A low nitrogen fertilizer called early bird, commonly used on golf courses. The cocoons act like a seed bank. Hang on. I didn't fully understand this. Something like they lay them in the fall before they die, and then they hatch throughout the spring and summer, providing a seemingly endless source of young worms. Okay, it's a two-headed monster, but I don't fully understand it. Anyway, they're just hard to stop. They're hard to stop. Maybe they're climbing in. And sees a worm crawling up. Small infestations. They're wary of applying into forests. Burning shows some promise, but the best solution is to stop spreading them in the first place. But how do you stop that? Compost companies could do, but the heating is tough. You need to educate the public to tell them not to spread the worms. Only buy mulch and compost that have been treated to kill stowaways. Avoid city compost. I see. Don't do plant swaps at all. So that's like the coronavirus of. It's like the social distancing measures for worms. The worm distancing measures. Like, guys, basically, please don't socialize with your plants. You know, keep your plants to yourself. Keep your plants to yourself. Don't share soil. She says, knock soil off of the trucks. The Eurocentric mindset says whatever's good in Europe has got to be good here. Unlike European worms, they elicit an intense feeling of repulsion in most people. They only get more gross over time. There's this stuff nightmares. It's like the Night of the Living Dead. They're much faster. So Bernie Williams is the only thing that they're smooth, they're handsome. I really think they are an amazing animal. Such what a character. 3 feet long? That's insane. 5 hearts. We are going to have to live with them. If humans catch the problem early on, sometimes you can eradicate, but usually they infiltrate and you can't stop them. House sparrows and starlings are lesser known offenders. What are starlings though? It's a type of bird, I assume. Yeah. Shakespeare enthusiasts intent on importing every species mentioned in his writing. That's hilarious. That's these guys, they outcompete the native songbirds for nest sites. So they, yeah, yep, 800 million damage. They're just part of American life. We get used to them. Will the worms be the same? Do they store less carbon? Are they more susceptible to drought? Are they supporting a different suite of biodiversity? Yeah, they are. But to most of us, we don't know. Is this close to the conclusion? I'm getting the vibe. This. Oh, it is. Yeah. So I was thinking, I kind of knew we were close to the or like my gut feeling said we were close to the conclusion, and I think that's mainly because we were coming towards an initial answer to a question that I had in my mind. The question in my mind was, so what can we do about them? Right? I'm hearing all these stories of how bad they are, but what can we do about them? And it sounds like we can't really do that much about them, and that's kind of being answered. So now what's the remaining question in my head? What's going to keep me interested in continuing reading? And I'm mainly just thinking, okay, if we're not going to be able to do anything about them, then what is the accommodationist philosophy here? How are we going to accommodate these worms? Or with the sparrows and the starlings and whatnot, how do we adjust? But that already kind of came out, so that's already kind of answered. So how are we going to adjust? How are we going to accommodate to these new worms? I mean, in Korea, assuming that we also have a lot of these worms, these crazy worms, I assume we're not super stressed out about it. But the people who are stressed seem to be the ones who really care about some of the native species of the American ecology, right? So you have like these native birds and plant and tree species that are suffering because of these worms, like the famous maple trees of New England. So people who care about those, and even industries which care about those, might be affected. They decline at some point. That's interesting. There's so many beautiful things here. Now, that's a little moving. For the first time, Dobson appears crestfallen, a little down, and we haven't had that from Dobson yet. So there's no answers. No answers. Sad. We get to feel sad. We get to feel sad with Dobson, but we get no answers. So we have no. There's nothing. There's nothing pointing us forward. Eurocentrism is not really a main theme in this essay. You know, we just kind of developed the history of. Our perception of worms, the sort of geological history of worms in North America, their effects on certain types of their ecological effects here, and the responses of people in our society at this time, you know, down to the level of, you know, people arguing with each other about who brought the worms in, stuff like that, and the efforts of people to try to ameliorate, to improve on the situation, to ameliorate the situation. So we're getting all of that. We're getting that picture. But is there an answer? Now, part of me says the only real answer to something that is inevitable, like if they're gonna keep reproducing at a rate of like 1.1x, like every, you know, like 10% per year, or like, you know, 10% per month or whatever. God forbid 10% per month. But if they're going to reproduce, then you need to have something that will have a sustainable counter effect on them. So maybe a predator who particularly likes earthworms, something like that. So that's, you know, not that I know anything about ecosystem, like sciences, ecology, ecological sciences for these kinds of things, but like I just feel like the math says, you know, a bunch of people. Actually, that's part of the math too, though. If everyone in our society knows what the earthworms are and they all change their behaviors accordingly, you know, even if it's not 100% of them, if there's like a significant dent in it, then you can affect the calculus so that it's no longer growing exponentially. But how easy is it to get everyone to think about worms? You know, we're not thinking about worms most of the time. So yeah, maybe some natural predators might be an easier way forward, but I don't know. You know, this is not my area of expertise, so I'm just making random guesses, honestly. I kind of, now that I think about this title again, cancel earthworms, I do feel like it's a little flippant. It's a little too cute. Cancel earthworms. Hey, let's cancel them. You know, written probably by the Atlantic editors, you know, to have a catchy title, but like, if we're gonna say that, then how, right? I want to know how, and I do want to know what the potential, like, what scientific thinking, what scientific thinkers say about an issue like this. What's the severity of an issue like this? You know, I can tell that it feels severe from within this essay, but what is the severity of it? Are there other scientists who think about this as a severe problem, and are there some ways forward for improving, for ameliorating the situation? I'd be curious about those kinds of things. It was fun though, just hearing about earthworms from a bunch of different perspectives, including the historical perspective and whatnot. So that was Cancel Earthworms. Bouncy read, and I hope you guys, so I enjoyed it personally, just reading it. It was a quick read. I didn't feel like I was slogging through it at all. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well, and if you have thoughts that I didn't have, if you had reactions that I didn't have, I'm kind of curious what those are. So leave a comment below, and I'll see you guys in the next live reading reaction. Peace.